Welcome to Who's the Daddy with Alexandra K. I'm Alexandra, your host, and this is the podcast where we discuss all things single mom by choice. And I'm joined today by Stephanie. You want to say hi, Stephanie?
Hi, I'm Stephanie.
And we have a great conversation ahead, so let's get started. All right, so Stephanie, how old were you when you first thought about becoming a single mom by choice?
Like first tiniest seed of a thought was right before I turned 34.
Okay. How did that jump in your head? Because I don't think that jumps in everyone's head. You know what I mean?
No, it's not a normal thought, I guess.
No.
I had just had a breakup,
Mhm.
and one of the big things that I felt led me to end up leaving that relationship, or it just not working out, was I wanted to be a mom. Like I wanted to be a mom, and he didn't want to be a dad, I don't think, or didn't know what he wanted. And I was like, I'm too old for you not to know what you want.
Right.
And it was over a bottle of wine and a bonfire with friends.
Yeah.
And I just suddenly was like, I should just have a kid of my own. If I'm still single in a year, I should just do it. And that was the seed.
Yeah. And so you were 34 when you first thought about it. At 35, is that when you started?
35 was when I started baking, because I was fresh out of a breakup. My friends kind of talked to me like, okay, don't do anything rash.
Don't do anything crazy, okay?
I'm a bit of an adrenaline junkie, so when I say I'm going to do something, like I usually do it. Like I used to be a triathlete, a marathoner, kind of stuff.
Okay.
Like, you'll do it. So reel it in, give yourself a year. So at like 35, I decided I'm going to move out of the inner city into the suburbs. I'm going to start looking, and I'm just going to start asking myself the questions. And what it came down to is I think the question I asked my friends too, just to make sure I wasn't crazy. I was like, if you had to pick one thing, marriage or motherhood, like if you could only have one. And for me, the answer just came. I didn't even know I had the answer until it came out. I was like, oh yeah, I want to be a mom.
Yeah.
And my friends were all like, it was that easy for you to answer? That's when I knew I was taking that path. I didn't know when I would get there. I didn't know what it would look like, but that's what I knew.
So for me, it was when I would hear even like my ex or anyone talk about their exes, it would be like the person that they dreaded most in the world. And then they would say something like, the best thing they ever did was give me my daughter. And I'm like, okay, well, I don't know if the person matters as much as you guys are trying to make them matter. You hate this person.
Yes.
So bonfire and wine, a year later, you finally said, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and do it. What was your criteria? Or actually, did you feel obligated or required to have conversations with certain people about your decision?
I did. So I actually had, at that point, I have a regular therapist that I check in with, because I feel like everyone should have one. Like that's just a requirement for life.
Right.
And I hadn't even brought it up to her yet until after I made the move. I think I mentioned it in passing around 35. And I was like, I'm not going to do it until I've moved to the suburbs, moved to this other part of town, put some money away. Like, I want to know that this is realistic. So then like 6 months later, I mentioned it to her again, and she's like, oh, so you're serious because you're still thinking about it. I was like, yes. So I was like, I wanted to talk through it with her. I didn't talk, I don't think my family didn't know right away, but close friends, the ones that were at the bonfire fire with me, and my close friends that are like my chosen family, most of whom are married, were already married at that time, or were at least engaged. Then one or two who were single, who I wanted to make sure that I wasn't just this crazy single person who wanted something I didn't have. Right. So my chosen friends were really like a strong community at that point. And they kind of, and even one of them was a guy friend as well. And I wanted to make sure that like we, I would have support. That was kind of where that came from. So it was probably like, it was all a long planning process. That's just how I do things.
Yeah. So do you feel like you had more positive support than anything negative?
Yeah. I don't think I had any negative reaction. I think my guy friend, very blunt. He was like, you're nuts, but you would do it.
Yeah.
And I was like, hey, that's support.
Right. Exactly. That's good. I only had negative comments from like estranged family when they found out. But like people who I have good relationships with, everyone was just like, yeah, sounds like something you would do. Yeah.
Exactly. If they know you, they know you.
Exactly. And I started initially thinking about it when I was like 26.
Oh, girl.
I was like 26 because I was like, I just want kids. I just want to be a mom. I just want to be a mom so bad. So, but I did not go forward with it until the end of my 30th year. So I did wait.
Yeah. So you had a thinking process too.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. We have to think these things out. So, what type of support did you like building a community? What type of support do you feel like you looked for during the process of getting pregnant?
So it's kind of funny, the support type changes as you go along. And
Mm-hmm.
for that, at that point, it was a lot of my single friends and my friends who didn't have kids,
Mm-hmm.
oddly enough. Because honestly, now I know they were just too busy, probably. But it was people who understood
Yeah.
how much it meant to me,
Mm-hmm.
particularly my single friends. They knew that I didn't want to date. I didn't want a relationship. This was something I wanted as much as they wanted that relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like when I started with IUIs, if I had a negative test, they were supportive during that,
Mm-hmm.
or making the decisions. We had a hangout where we chose my donor.
Yeah.
Some friends like over wine. Always, there's a lot of wine involved, whole process.
Yeah.
Um, we went through and they helped me pick the donor and like asked questions
Mm-hmm.
about it. But it was friends who didn't have kids, or
Mm-hmm.
friends who had one kid, but like an older kid, people that weren't on the same journey.
Yeah.
That was key.
So, what were some of your criteria for choosing a donor?
So I actually chose a donor twice. The first
Okay.
donor criteria were different than my second time. So the
Okay.
first donor, I wanted someone who was just like me.
Oh gosh. Okay.
So I mean, it down to the fact that I'm an architect, he was an architect. I'm 5'10", he was like 5'11", very similar build. Like I'm like, that way they're gonna be my clones. Not really, but
You guys
and
might run into each other at like a conference or
so
something.
the other criteria, and the most important criteria, was that the donor come from as far away in the country as possible. So
Oh
I live
wow.
in Georgia, and I chose a bank out of Washington State.
Okay.
I have no family and no connections there because I'm like, I dated way too many guys locally to something. And also, I have male relatives. I get too
Oh
many risks available,
gosh.
so I didn't want to risk anything.
Do you know, not until you said that sentence had I ever imagined that I might choose a family member that was a donor? Because you know how people always say, like, oh, well, your kids need to know their siblings so they don't date their siblings. Well, like, I always thought about that, but
Yeah.
I never even imagined.
Well, only because I have a brother close in age and we made jokes about it at one point, and I was like, the light bulb went. I was like, oh, I have
Oh,
other
gosh. Oh, that's crazy. Okay.
Yeah.
So, um, what process did you use to get pregnant? So, I heard you say that you did at least one IUI.
Yeah, so I started with IUI,
Mm-hmm.
a smaller, because I wanted insurance to cover what they could, but they didn't cover anything until you've been trying, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
So I did IUI at a much smaller clinic,
Mm-hmm.
real personal, kind of. She was very, very like comforting through the process, and so the IUI for a few. I had one that was successful, but ended unfortunately in a
Mm.
molar pregnancy.
Oh wow.
So I had to kind of restart. And that's where I mentioned I did a donor selection twice.
Mm-hmm.
I chose a different donor after finishing my IUI journey. I was like, you know what? That one didn't work.
He didn't
We're
work.
insurance is jumping in. I'm gonna start over,
Mm-hmm.
go IVF.
How many IUIs did you try?
6. So the
Okay.
second one's the one that worked.
Okay.
And then we just didn't change our protocol after that. And I responded well to it, but I don't think the donor and I were a good match,
Yeah.
because the response I had with my first round of IVF was awesome.
Yeah.
So clearly that was the right path for me when
Yeah.
I went there,
It's
the right
so
donor.
it's so interesting because not until I started like all of this IVF stuff did I learn. Like, so you know how we know, oh, the first sperm that gets to the egg is the one that fertilizes the egg. And it's like, well, not necessarily.
Yeah.
Your egg might not like that sperm.
That one
Your
might be rejected.
right. Your egg might not even like this donor, this human altogether, and none of his sperm will fertilize your
Yeah.
egg. Like your egg can harden and not let a sperm in. So that was
Well,
something. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, that's sort of the molar pregnancy. One of the
Yeah.
explanations is the egg doesn't like
Yeah.
this. I mean, there's a lot
Mm-hmm.
of different reasons that it can
Yeah.
happen, but one of them is that you're just incompatible, and your body is trying to protect you from this incompatible
Yeah.
thing that it thinks is dangerous.
Yes. And it's so interesting that you also said that you wanted someone so similar to you. And I know that you didn't talk about ethnicity at all, but like just like career and height and stuff.
Yeah.
But another thing that I learned during IVF is that the more similar you are, the less compatible you are. Not
Yeah.
similar as
No,
in like career, but like
right, right.
ethnically, the more similar you are, the less compatible you are.
Exactly. And that's so my second one I actually chose a little bit differently because I'm like, well, not too much like who is someone I would date.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I went that route instead.
Okay. And so you did IVF, and tell me about that process. Like, I always want to know like stats. You know your stats, like
Yeah.
this many
Yeah.
follicles, this many retrieved, this many 5 day.
More can't remember all that. Yeah, I actually. Well, it's funny because like my IVF journey, it was a pain in the butt to get started because my company, like I got it was through insurance finally.
Mm-hmm.
They changed
Oh
insurance and like
gosh.
changed it at like January 1st,
Uh-huh.
and I was like 2 weeks away from my retrieval at that point, and so
Oh
everything
my
had to be
goodness.
started over. I was like, this is never going to happen. And let me tell you, this was in January of 2020. If you want to
Yeah,
get an idea of the hurdles I was
girl.
about to face,
Girl.
let me tell you.
That was just like a precursor to the year, okay?
Exactly. So on Valentine's Day of 2020, I had my retrieval. Valentine's Day.
Symbolic.
Yes. And so I think I had 21 eggs, 14 fertilized.
Okay.
Um, 9 made it to day 5.
Okay.
And I did PGT testing
Mm-hmm.
and ended up with 4.
That's good.
Yeah. So 3 boys and
Okay.
1 girl on
Oh my
ice is what I,
goodness. So
yeah.
when you transferred your embryos, did you choose which embryo?
So I talked to the doctor about it and I was like, I don't want to choose. I want you to choose the best one.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then tell me, like, you can tell me, I just want you to do it. And he was like, well, they're all perfect. They're all like tops quality. I'm like, well, yay, go me, go
Go
body.
me.
He's like, so they're all equally good. He's like,
Yeah.
I would pick any of them. And he's like, I would probably choose a male embryo for the first one because you have 3 of those. And
Mm.
I didn't know it at the time, but I just felt this joy inside of me all of a sudden. I was like, I guess I want a boy.
I'm a
I
boy
guess
mom.
yeah, like it just immediately. I mean, because at first when I heard the 3-to-1 ratio, I was kind of disappointed. I'm like, well, I only have one shot at a girl.
Hmm.
But the second the doctor's like, we're going to transfer a boy, I was like, okay, we'll
Good.
do this.
Yeah.
Yeah,
People talk about gender disappointment, and I'm like, I definitely understand it, but it's good that you were excited.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I didn't know how it would feel,
Hmm.
because you don't know until you're there.
Yeah.
And I
No,
thought,
seriously.
the idea of a boy seemed scary until that moment.
Hmm.
It's scary though in its own way. But
Well, now you have what, 2 boys, right?
I do,
Oh,
I
goodness.
do. Yeah.
Okay. So you transferred your first embryo, and your first embryo took?
It did. And it took forever to get to the transfer. So it was a few days after my birthday, actually, in June.
Oh,
So I
goodness.
did a virtual birthday celebration with my friends where we drank wine again. And
Wait, then our kids are literally probably just weeks apart.
February of 2021 is when he was born.
Okay, and Sloan is April 2021.
Yeah. So he was actually born a couple of days after the anniversary of the transfer, which I thought was really fun.
Oh my goodness.
Everything for me is like February. So
Everything's in February.
yeah, because the transfer was supposed to happen in March of 2020,
Mm-hmm.
and then April, and then of course they had to keep pushing off. So it was when they first opened back up for transfers was in June of 2020.
Okay.
And so that's how it timed out. They're like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, well, we'll get you in. And
Yeah.
I had a relatively smooth pregnancy.
Really. And how was your birth?
It was good. So I have high blood pressure,
Mm-hmm.
which I've always had it. It's kind of annoying.
Yeah.
I joke I'm so high strung because I am. And so I had to be induced 2 weeks
Yeah.
early. So with the first, that sucked. I was in labor for 2 days, I think 48 hours.
Girl.
And one of my good friends is a midwife, so she was there with me.
Oh,
She for
nice.
me, and I credit her with the fact that I wasn't like pushed towards a C-section.
Yes.
She talked through like, hey, can you try this? Can you do this?
Mm-hmm.
And so I credit her with
Good.
actually making it through. And so he was actually born on my grandmother's birthday. Yeah.
You have so
So
much
it was
symbolism.
Yeah, it was wonderful. And so yeah, he was born and we had, I think half the hospital staff was in my room
Mm-hmm.
because it was this massive room and it was like a corner room. And it was again during COVID. So
Yeah.
like I couldn't have visitors except for this
Mm-hmm.
one person. And but she was this midwife and everyone loved talking to her because I think they missed outside people
Mm-hmm.
because,
Yeah.
and she had made friends with all the doctors, all the nurses.
Yeah.
And I think it's a training hospital. So they had like two of every,
Oh, yeah. Of course. Mm-hmm.
and there was shift change as I'm pushing. And so the door's wide open. The curtain is
Shut.
pulled back. The whole hall can see my whole world. And I think we counted 12 people in there at,
Oh my
as he
goodness.
as he entered the world. So yeah,
A real party, a real
it was a
welcome
party.
party for real. Oh my gosh. Okay, so I know you talked about support when you were choosing your donor and going through IVF. So how do you feel like your support has shifted, or like what you need for support has shifted now that you are actually living as a single mom by choice?
I definitely found myself like I still like appreciate the support from my friends who don't have kids in similar ages or who aren't in the same life space. But I found that it's moms of similar age kids that I was already friends with.
Mhm.
It seemed like we all just had babies around the same time, which helped.
Mhm.
But I actually have a coworker who was going through IVF at the same time as me.
Oh
Not
really?
a single mom, but
Uh-huh.
still going.
Right.
And we were actually due a week apart with our first.
Oh my
And so
goodness.
our kids are friends and we talk at work. So going through it, like the ups and the downs of
Mhm.
IVF in general, the anxieties
Oh
about
yeah.
being pregnant,
Mhm.
like that was a very helpful partnership to have during that pregnancy.
Mhm.
And even just going through it with my second, like, oh, I've got a transfer coming up, kind of nervous, like that, having that person.
Mhm.
Because most other moms don't understand the IVF journey.
Yeah. No,
And
yeah.
then similarly, just having friends with similar age kids who I've been friends with for a decade. Now our kids are our friends, and they've been super helpful at just
Yeah.
like taking my oldest and watching him for a while I need to deal with a baby. Or
Mhm.
they understand how hard it is as a mom, and then they also understand. I can't imagine if my partner wasn't around how hard this would be.
Right. Yeah, that's true. So so you transferred your second embryo, or yeah, your second embryo when?
So that one was actually um, February
Oh
15th
gosh.
of what year was that? Was 2022, I think. Yeah,
Okay.
2022. And that one was a blighted ovum. So that one did not lead to my,
Oh, okay.
yeah. And so, which ultimately kind of, was that 20? No, it was 2023 when I transferred that. I'm losing track of what year it was. It was right before my oldest turned 2,
Yeah.
right before he turned 2.
Mhm.
And so they were going to be less than 3 years apart.
Mhm.
And then somewhere around when he hit 2.5, he became psychotic. And I was very glad to not be very pregnant at that time.
Listen.
Um, so it wasn't until September that I did it again.
Okay, okay.
So by that point,
So
six
then
months later,
so now you have one embryo left.
yes, just the female embryo
So
left.
people always ask me what I'm going to do with my extra embryos. What do you think you'll do with your last embryo?
So I've transferred to long-term storage because I have no idea.
Yeah.
Because unfortunately, with the birth of my second son, I had traumatic bleeding, like major,
Oh
I lost
gosh.
all my blood, like 9 units of blood. It was
Mhm.
bad. So I
Mhm.
had to have an emergency hysterectomy.
No.
Yeah.
Oh my
So it
goodness.
was, I mean, I was not meant to carry a third child, clearly.
Oh wow.
Um,
Yeah.
which the decision might have been made for me because I couldn't make it on my own. I feel like that was kind of what was happening because I mean I was 42 as I like 2 weeks after he was born, I turned 42. And I'm like, I'm
Mhm.
42. I've got 2 kids. I don't need a uterus, you know? Um,
I don't need a period, okay?
that's the thing is like I don't have to deal with that, but I also don't have menopause yet. So I'm like, yeah, baby.
Perfect.
Yeah. But I've transferred it to long-term storage because I don't know what I want. I mean, if I were ever to, get married, would it be worth funding a surrogate to carry that? Just,
Mhm.
I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not putting out any options. Or if another donor family needed,
Mhm.
an embryo and couldn't, and we're out of, options, I would be willing
You would donate your embryo
or
to, so I call them
someone.
sister moms.
Okay, yes, sister moms. Yeah.
So,
If someone in our circle, yeah.
okay, interesting. So
Yeah.
I have embryos. I don't think I feel comfortable donating them. I think like
I say that in theory. I don't know if
Yeah,
I
I
could
just,
actually.
it's like just like if I only imagine like if, because I feel like Sloan looks just like me.
Yes.
So I'm like, if I had given that embryo to someone, I think I would be like
Yeah.
spiraling like,
That's
so I don't know if I could.
that's the biggest hesitation I have because both my boys look like me. My oldest, like he is a copy paste of me
Yeah.
as a toddler.
Mm-hmm.
And then my youngest, I didn't think he was look that much like me, but I'm like, oh my goodness, I see home videos and he looks like me. So we have very strong genetics. Genes
Yeah.
are like just out there. I'm like,
And then
and so I
just
can't
imagine a little girl.
a girl. Yeah.
Like it's going to be times 10.
Yeah. And because I did choose a daughter who had some similar features. So
Mm-hmm.
like some of the stuff like the big brown eyes, that was going to happen regardless. My kids were going to
Regardless.
have brown eyes,
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, it's a big risk, maybe I'll hold on to it indefinitely. Maybe if my brother wants to start a family, and he gets with someone who can't have kids,
Yeah.
that's family. It's
That
someone
would
within
be
the family.
very different. Yeah. Very
Yeah.
different and very close to you.
That's I think that would be the easier way, but I have no idea.
Yeah.
So I figured I'd put it in long-term storage for a couple years and then I'll revisit it. At one point, I know I'd heard of it's called a compassionate transfer, and
Yes.
not all clinics do them.
Mm-hmm.
And my original idea was that I would try to find a clinic that would do that.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think they'll do it if you don't have a uterus.
Just
It's
throw
not
it
very
in there.
compassionate. But just,
Just
just stick
throw.
it in there. See what happens.
Oh, I'm like hitting this mic. Oh, okay. So that's funny because my clinic does not do compassionate transfers. And my clinic
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think mine does either.
pretty much only lets you donate to science, donate to another person or couple, or destroy. So
Yeah, I think the options that mine had. So I would have to like do all the transferring and stuff.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Okay, so what do you wish you knew prior to starting this journey, and what's one word of advice you would give to a hopeful single mom by choice?
Well, I honestly wish that So one thing I know that I wish I wish no one told me how hard it was because I wouldn't have done it if I knew how hard it was, to be honest.
Right?
But no, I wish I knew that support's going to come in places you least expect it.
Mm-hmm.
Like I really thought that the support would look a certain way and
Mm-hmm.
be a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
And it looks nothing like what I expected. It's support for people that I thought were living a different style of life for me. It was your standards for what you need
Mm-hmm.
change,
Yeah.
your standards for how you keep your home
Oh
change, and your
gosh.
priorities. The moment that child entered the world, I felt like this switch flipped, and
Mm-hmm.
the things that mattered didn't matter anymore.
Yeah.
Like I was so worried about not being able to do triathlons anymore. I was so worried about not having a social life anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, I haven't missed it. I do occasionally miss the social life,
Mm-hmm.
but don't miss it. I don't miss going to concerts. I
But
don't
not so
miss
much that you wouldn't do this.
Right.
Not
Like,
so much
yeah,
that
if
you
I get
wouldn't
a
become a
mom's
mom.
night out, I would love to have fun and do it, but I don't want to just always be home with my kids. It's just
Right.
that I don't have any regrets, no matter
No.
how hard it is.
Yeah.
Like I was afraid I'd have regrets.
So if you could go back and do it sooner, would you do it sooner?
No,
No. Okay.
no. I might have done a retrieval sooner,
Okay.
but I
Oh, like
um
creating your embryos or
yeah, but
getting your
again, I
eggs.
had good results at the age I did it.
Yeah.
Um so no, I don't. I think if I could have just gone straight to IVF, I would have preferred that,
Yeah.
obviously, but you gotta work the system.
Yeah. You really do. I always say I'm glad I enjoyed all of my 20s because I started at the end of my 30th year. I had my
Yeah.
consultation right before I turned 31.
Okay.
And as much as I say, oh, I wish I had knew my kids like 10 years longer. It's like, no,
Yeah.
I really think you need your 20s.
Yes. And I graduated college kind of late, like mid-20s. And so
Me
I
too.
feel like I started my adulthood a little bit. And I remember joking right before I turned 30
Mm-hmm.
that I had a bucket list. I was like, I want to do a bucket list in my like 20s still. And it was basically 25 to 35. I did all these things that I wanted
Yes.
to do, and it was all about me.
Mm-hmm.
It was jumping out of an airplane, skydiving, getting tattoos, running a marathon,
Mm-hmm.
hiking out west by myself, things that are dangerous and you shouldn't do when you have kids.
At
And
all.
at
I'm
all,
scared to get on roller coasters now.
right?
I
I don't even like,
love roller coasters.
I'm like, no, what if I get hurt and then my kids won't have me anymore?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's funny that you say that you wanted to like to complete like a bucket list, because the year before I moved to where I am now in Virginia, I was living in Miami, and I said, you know what? I'm going to have 1 year in Miami. I'm going to live in Midtown. I'm going to live in a high rise. I'm going to just have fun. And I did it 1 year. And then I moved to Virginia. I bought a home and I started IVF.
That's kind of how I'm going to finish my living in the middle of the city, get all the fun out, not all the fun out, but do all the things, be a part of all the social groups,
without having to think about anyone else.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then go to the burbs and settle down.
Right. Each episode, we set the record straight on something that's second nature to us, but might be a little confusing to those outside the single mom by choice world. So today we're going to break down what's the difference between a dad and a donor. You going to chime in first?
Sure.
Okay.
A dad, and is involved, and you chose to have them involved in some way, shape, even if they're estranged, because an estranged father is still a dad, because at some point he was a choice, whether good or bad. There was a choice made that person would be the dad. Now, whether they're still involved, that's another story. A donor is someone who there was never intent for this person to be involved, even
no social relationship.
No social relationship, whether it's anonymous or not. The intent was that here is my seed. It is a piece of a puzzle that you need for your bigger puzzle.
Yeah. Yeah. And I always like to remind people, because they'll say like, your kid's donor. And I'm like, well, he donated to me. If you get a blood transfusion, they donated their blood to you, not your children, just because they came from your body. You know what I mean? So I'm like, he's my donor. And if my kids want to call him their dad or their father, then, I mean, it's not something that I can control. That's their choice. So I always like to make sure people understand, like, he donated to me. He didn't donate to my kids. All right, now let's switch gears a little bit. We're going to get into solicited advice. This is the part of the episode where we take listener questions and offer some real and unfiltered advice. Today's question comes from a listener, and they say, Dear Alexandra, I'm a single mom by choice, and I've been trying to connect with other moms through local groups and play dates. While I've met some great people, I often find that so many conversations revolve around husbands, whether it's venting about them, sharing parenting responsibilities, or just the dynamics of having a partner. I totally understand that's part of their experience, but I can't relate, and sometimes it makes me feel like an outsider. I really want to build a strong mom community, but I'm struggling to find other moms whose world isn't so different. How do I navigate these conversations without feeling left out? And where can I find other moms, single or just more independent, who I can truly relate to? Signed, Searching for My Mom Crew. What do you think?
I mean, I have the same challenges, but I mean, I would definitely say finding moms who are working moms is more likely to find that balance. Someone who's not the primary mom, because I have friends who are both working and stay-at-home moms, but I find that there's more likely for a new relationship, a new friend, to be someone that is at least, whether it's a similar career you're in or a similar, like, has something else in common with you that doesn't have to be the kids. I tend to be interested in sports and things that I get along well with the fathers, and so it is tough to navigate that. But try to befriend both parents. As long as they're both secure in their relationship, then befriend them both. And sometimes that makes it a little easier. Most of the time I have the same challenge, though. You've got to find people with something else in common other than the kids.
Yes, that's true. And I always think that like, just be your true self, because like when they're talking about their husbands, just because you don't have a husband doesn't mean that you can't chime in on the conversation. And I'll say this, it only registered to me what I said after I said it, and I was like, oh, I kind of wish I could take that back. But I was at my daughter's gymnastics practice, and me and one of the moms, we get along really well. She has like 5 girls, and I just act like Sloan is part of their little sibling group whenever we're in gymnastics. And she was telling me how her dad is like this Renaissance man, and he just like builds everything, and her husband is the same way. And I was like, oh, I need a man like that. And then I was like, I don't know if that's acceptable to say to someone, but it's like, that's like the space I'm in. Like, you're talking about your husband, I'm talking about the lack of a husband. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I would say just like be yourself. Yeah. And like just live in your truth.
Yeah. I mean,
You'll
if you
find
make
your
if
people.
you show that you're comfortable with your situation, it's not going to make it's going to make them comfortable
Right.
too.
Yeah. I agree. Before we close out, the title of the podcast is Who's the Daddy? You know that's a common question we're asked. So I want to know, what do you say when you're asked the question, whether you're asked by someone who feels entitled to know exactly how you've conceived, or a complete stranger that just sees you and is like, well, what do you mean, who's the dad?
Depends on if I say what I want to say.
Well, what would you want to say? Mind your
Oh,
business.
I don't know. Am I supposed to know that? Like, that's what I want to say. Am I supposed to know who the dad is? I don't know.
Some
But
guy
no,
on the internet.
yeah. No, usually I love to launch into, well, I'm a single mom by choice, so I use anonymous donor. I actually use that as an opportunity to tell my story.
Mm-hmm. So did you use an anonymous donor?
I did. I used anonymous. I mean, well, not
Cool.
sorry, anonymous until 18. So
Oh, okay,
they'll
okay, 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 okay,
the first one was truly anonymous, but then I changed my tune with the actual donor
okay.
that conceived with.
Yeah. Okay, so I think I don't even remember which one. There's like only a few options, but I don't remember. It's like you get a certain amount of information when they turn 18. But
Yeah.
I'm always curious when people have anonymous donors, whether they think about like their child possibly doing DNA testing.
See, that's why I switched from anonymous to the
Mm-hmm.
open ID or whatever, because
Yeah.
this day and age, that's going to
Yeah,
happen.
they're gonna find them.
Yeah, and you might as well make it comfortable, whether they want to or not. I don't know. It
Yeah.
feels like a safer choice.
I agree. I agree. Yeah. All right. So I want to thank Stephanie for joining us on today's episode of Who's the Daddy with Alexandra K. If you believe you know someone who would enjoy this episode, please share it with them. Thanks for listening to Who's the Daddy with Alexandra K.